that makes you more comfortable. We'll be posting this on our YouTube afterwards, so you're welcome to go and re-reference it, and as well as point any friends to the recording if they were unable to join us live. We have a live transcript going, so be sure to turn on your captions in the Zoom toolbar if that's something that helps. And we'll have a Q&A at the end, so you can ask questions in the chat and we'll get to them at the end, or you can just wait and ask them when the time comes. So part of Campus Earth Month is our grand prize giveaway. Today you'll be able to earn 5 code words. They'll either be said on the slide, by a presenter, or written in the chat. And each code word is an entry into our grand prize giveaway. You'll keep track of these code words and send them into one email to sustainability@tamu.edu by April 22nd, which is actual Earth Day. And there are so many other ways to get involved and earn more code words and entries. So be sure to visit that link at the very bottom to see all the ways that you can earn entries, and all the prize details and rules involved with our giveaway. These are the prizes that we'll be giving away this month. We have 1 winner for Tier 1, 2 winners for Tier 2, and 5 winners for Tier 3. Lots of amazing prizes to win here that encourage getting outside, but also sustainable choices and lifestyles. Our biggest event of the year is coming up, so be sure to come and join us for Earth Day. It'll be on April 15th from 10 to 1 on Rudder Plaza. Aguilan Mariachi will be performing. The Queen of Aguilan, Rev, will be showing up to take pictures with everyone. And we'll also have so many different student organizations, community partners, and departments on campus talking about their sustainability initiatives. So it'll be a great time, and also the best way to earn as many entries as possible for our giveaway. If you missed it on Monday, we had our first Campus Earth Month talk. Elliot and Sarah presented, Is Clean Energy Actually Clean? We're often told that the future is clean energy, but what actually goes into powering that future? This talk dives into the world of energy transition minerals, exploring the complex trade-offs between global sustainability goals and the environmental and social realities of the mining required to meet them. From policy shifts to community impacts, we question whether a truly clean energy future is possible and what it will take to get there. So you can watch that on our YouTube channel. This is a really great discussion, and I hope you tune in. You can still earn some code words by watching that on YouTube. We have our last Campus Earth Month talk on Friday. It's at 3:30 p.m. You register the same way you did for this one via the Instagram, the link in our Instagram bio. This will be presented by Ciara and Adele, about biomimicry, nature as our mentor. In this TED-style talk, we'll explore the science behind biomimicry, highlighting case studies of sustainable innovations inspired by natural systems and their role in advancing the circular economy. By shifting our perspective from learning about nature to learning from nature, this discussion reveals how natural models can provide a powerful blueprint for healing and sustaining our planet. So we hope to see you there. That'll be another opportunity to earn code words. If you're wanting to do really cool work like our interns here today, presenting about topics that you truly care about, apply for our internship program. Applications close on April 19th at midnight. There's 8 internships available every semester. It's on campus. All majors are welcome, and it's only open to undergraduate students. So if you're interested, scan that QR code and you'll be able to see the position description and how to apply. Alrighty, and now I'm going to hand it over to our wonderful presenters.
Awesome. Hey guys. This is Caring for What Can't Speak for Itself, Rights for Animals and Plants for Future Generations. I'm Peyton Brinkle.
And howdy, my name is Sawyer Rabelais.
Hi, my name is Isha Gupta.
All right. I want y'all all to imagine the Earth as one interconnected system, a living network where plants, animals, ecosystems, and humans all influence one another. The Gaia hypothesis, developed by scientist James Lovelock and microbiologist Lynn Margulis, proposes that life and the physical environment interact to maintain conditions suitable for life. When ecosystems destabilize, humans feel the consequences, from food insecurity to climate-driven disasters.
For most of history, society has operated under anthropocentrism, the belief that humans are the central and most important beings. This worldview shaped our laws, economies, and ethics.
But today, scholars challenge this narrow view. Peter Singer, a moral philosopher at Princeton University, argues that animals display interests like avoiding suffering and are therefore worth moral consideration. Singer argues that the ability to suffer, sentience, is what gives any moral value. Both animals and plants have interests that reinforce their desire to live, and to ignore those interests is a form of discrimination called speciesism. And ethicists demand that we consider their capacity to experience harm or benefit from our decisions. John Knoll, an environmental philosopher at the University of Tennessee, argues that future generations also have interests, even though they cannot speak for themselves. Knoll shows that future generations have real moral claims on the world we shape, even though they can't speak for themselves. And when we prioritize short-term human convenience over their needs, we actively harm those who will inherit the consequences of our choices. And then finally, the rights of nature movement shows that ecosystems themselves may need legal protection. Animal rights ethicists Donaldson and Kenlicka show us that animals are moral subjects with rights. Therefore, justice shouldn't stop humans. Our ethical responsibility extends to all sentient beings, forcing us to rethink how we live alongside them.
So the question becomes, if animals, plants, ecosystems, and future generations all have interests, what do we owe them?
To give something moral consideration means recognizing that its interests matter when we make decisions that affect it. Plants, while not sentient, demonstrate an interest in survival through biological adaptation. A real-life example is desert plants like the saguaro cactus and how they expand and contract their pleated stems to store water, allowing them to survive extreme drought. This adaptation shows clear biological interest in continued life.
Singer argues that animals have intrinsic value because they can suffer and they have preferences. A real example of this is that bears in the wild seek out willow and aspen trees that contain salicylic acid, the natural compound behind aspirin when they're injured or inflamed. This demonstrates that animals actively make choices that reduce suffering.
Knoll argues that future generations have interests even though they cannot express themselves. An example of this would be the 2023 Montoya youth climate lawsuit held versus Montana. Recognize that young people and future generations have a constitutional right to a stable climate. This shows courts acknowledge that decisions today directly shape the world's future people to inherit.
Historically, our systems have not reflected these interests. They have been built around human traits like reasoning and communication, and ethicists Robin Atfield and Rebecca Humphreys say that justice is focused around humans because only humans can defend their interests given our structure. But that creates a big problem. Animals, plants, and entire ecosystems don't fit into this model, so they're often excluded from justice when their needs conflict with human desires. And when their interests go unconsidered, decisions become one-sided, leading to a self-destructive arrogance with severe consequences looming over our future. As a result of a model that favors us with little consideration for other forms of life, consequences have arisen with great impacts for today's plants and animals, as well as future generations of humans. Short-term gains have taken priority over long-term sustainability efforts, and it will be the unspoken for groups suffering the most severe of consequences. This anthropocentric structure has contributed to massive biodiversity loss. Scientists have documented unprecedented species extinction over the past century, driven mostly by human activity. We've put the ecosystem that we depend on at risk.
Together, these ideas show a shift. We are beginning to see Earth not as a resource, but as a community of life with shared interests. Because living things have interests of their own, they are sentient, capable of feeling and expressing and experience suffering. Ecosystems should be understood as a whole that includes all of us. If the whole system is not thriving, it doesn't matter how individual parts are doing. So, environments should be valued for the quality of life they provide to all living beings, not just for what they offer humans.
So why does this matter? We are living through a human-driven mass extinction. Once a species is gone, it is gone forever. Their cultural significance, ancestral history, and unique abilities can never be replaced. Many of these species are our only connection to past generations of humans, and that history is worth saving for scientific, aesthetic, and cultural reasons. We also have a responsibility for environmental stewardship. If we benefit from Earth systems, we must maintain them. NOAA.gov defines environmental stewardship as the responsible use and protection of the natural environment through conservation and sustainable practices to enhance ecosystem resilience and human well-being.
We owe moral consideration to animals because they have ethically relevant interests, especially when we're making decisions based on a comparison of interests, like we do often in our utilitarian system. Even if animals and plants cannot communicate directly, we can often infer their interests through behavior and biology.
Future generations also have interest, which is why we must protect the ecosystem we leave behind. We often think about what we wish past generations had done differently. Now we are in that same position for the future. This connects to ideas of intergenerational justice. Future people have rights that can be violated by our actions today. From a utilitarian perspective, the total happiness of future generations far outweighs our own, giving us a strong ethical responsibility to act. That's why precautionary measures matter. Protecting ecosystems now helps preserve our legacy and prevent irreversible harm, including mass extinction. The Earth Law Center argues without structural changes like shifting towards ecocentric governance, future generations will continue to bear the escalating costs of environmental decline. This means moving away from systems that prioritize short-term human benefit towards ones that recognize the rights of ecosystems and protect long-term environmental stability.
So how do we extend moral consideration in practice? For plants and ecosystems, moral consideration can look like supporting rights of nature laws and restoring damaged environments. A judicial example is from Ecuador and Bolivia. For Ecuador, 2008, their constitution grants legal rights to nature, allowing citizens to sue on behalf of rivers and forests. And Bolivia's 2010 Laws of the Rights of Mother Earth recognizes that ecosystems are legal entities with rights to life, biodiversity, and restoration.
For animals, extending moral consideration means reducing the unnecessary suffering that we have caused them and protecting the habitats that are at risk. A judicial example of this is the bees in Peru, which in 2022, Peru passed a law recognizing bees as a species requiring state protection, mandating conservation measures due to their ecological importance. Over time, we can hope to see more strives for necessary protection and animal rights. This includes recognizing their fundamental rights to life, liberty, and physical integrity without fear of suffering unnecessary harm caused by us.
And for future generations, moral consideration means prioritizing long-term ecological stability. It is reasonable to assume that future generations will need from us clean air, stable climates, and livable ecosystems, because these are the same necessities we value today. Just as we wish past generations had acted with more foresight, future generations are depending on us to do the same. A real world example is Wales Well-being of Future Generations Act, which legally requires public institutions to consider long-term impacts in decision-making. One of the first formal models of guardianship for future people. Across all categories, this calls for moving beyond anthropocentric thinking and adopting a system view. Protecting nature ultimately protects us. By acting now, we can break the pattern of neglect and avoid placing the burden of environmental collapse on people who don't yet exist.
We live at a turning point. Our choices today determine the world future generations will inherit and the survival of countless species alongside us.
The lesson here is simple, and that is that all living beings have interests, and recognizing those interests is the foundation of justice, ethics, and sustainability.
If we shift from an anthropocentric mindset to an ecological one, seeing ecosystems as wholes rather than isolated parts, we can build a future rooted in reciprocity, stewardship, and respect for all life.
Small actions add up when we act together. Vote for policies that protect ecosystems, support conservation efforts, and most importantly, carry forward a mindset that values life, even the life that cannot speak for itself. And that is all we have for y'all. We're happy to answer your questions, but before we get to that, we have a code word, which is intergenerational, as you see on your screen now. And then these are our references.
Wonderful. That was so good. I just learned so much. I loved all the different examples that y'all had, especially the one about the bears and the bees. That was so cool to see positive change happening in other countries. So I'm now going to open the floor for questions. So feel welcome to unmute and ask your question, or you can type it in the chat. What is
I'll answer the
species?
question since I brought it up. What is speciesism? So that was an idea, correct me if I'm wrong, it was Peter Singer who said that. And it was basically that if we're ignoring these interests and we're playing on a field where oftentimes we're evaluating on what's best for everyone involved, but to really find the answer to that, we have to think about whose interests are being favored or denied. And oftentimes we just completely forget about the interest of animals, future generations, plants, because they're unable to vote or really have a say in these discussions. So speciesism would be to discriminate against their interests, which I mean, when you think about it in numbers terms, I think they outpopulate us. It's like 90+% of what actually makes up all living life forms, and that we shouldn't discriminate against them in favor of just us.
That one's for you, Caroline.
Yes, so for the code words, yes, please send it all in one email and save your code words till the end of the month when you've collected them all. Of course. I would like to ask though, what brought y'all to this topic? I feel like it's very unique. Um, Something that people don't generally consider when it comes to sustainability, especially that it has more of a philosophy, ethical background. So just love to hear what interested all of y'all in this. And then we'll get to the next question.
Well, it was Sawyer's idea. He's the one that brought it up in our brainstorming. But I think it's also like just a theme that's been being brought up a lot, like in our discussions, just like during class and things like that. Like when we were reading Braiding Sweetgrass, which was a really cool book. And just like other things, I think it's just also uh, something we all have kind of found a passion for. But I think once Sawyer put it out there, we just had a lot more discussions about it and thought it's something that deserves to be talked about more.
Isha, did you want to answer?
Oh yeah, well, I agree that it was it was definitely something that I had thought about before of like we should care about the earth and sustainability because plants, animals, and future generations all have rights. And it's one of the big reasons that I'm so interested in sustainability. So that's what really interested me about this topic.
And then, as far as the topic, what was appealing about it to me was that I thought that we were able to take three completely different things, at least how we think of them, and kind of combine them into the same line of reasoning, which is here are these interests that they have, and in some, those interests are all just about the continuation of life and wanting respect for that. And I think it's one that we can all kind of connect to as a species and our own desires. So, a lot of fun.
Love that. Next question. What surprised you most in your research?
I was surprised by the overwhelming amount of examples and evidence there is, and I'm sure a lot of people who are watching this thought of their own. I know I came into this project with my own ideas, and then Isha and Peyton brought up many great examples. But when you really look at nature around us, and I know we've been kind of cut off from that and secluded away from these things out in nature, but when you actually go and look, you really realize how much they're screaming at us about what they want and what would be best for them. And now it's just on us to make the right decisions. But I was also surprised by, how many people were interested in this stuff. Like, there's so many people doing research.
I think for me, it's kind of just surprised me how recent a lot of the like movements towards giving rights to plants, animals, and future generations. And it's also a discussion that we had in class a couple days ago about like uh, just the fact that bad things had to happen in order for us to make a change. And I think a love for the earth and preserving it and taking care of it has been something since the beginning of time. But it's just surprising to me that we had to see all these bad situations happen, animals, plants dying, the earth getting to a point where it, like Sawyer said, is like screaming for help. Um, just to get to this place. And so, while it's surprising that laws are just now coming out for these things, I think it's also a great thing that they're coming out. I think it's definitely something that we see that we'll need to act on now, and that we actually need to put laws in place because if we don't, then these things are going to um, continue to happen. So, yeah, that's what I'd say.
Yeah, I would agree with Peyton that like probably one of the most surprising things to me was how recent a lot of the laws that were enacted towards it were, especially for like future generations, because I think that especially that is something that we think about often. It is that like, and we brought this up that like there's things that we wish past generations would have done for the earth to be a better place for us. And so it was really surprising to me that it was only recently that laws were being put in place towards this.
Next question, and most likely our last question. What can we do to help advocate for plants and animals?
I think I would say, and I touched on it a little bit, but voting is a really big deal, especially because a lot of what we talked about, and like the actions that are happening are like laws, and things like in different constitutions and things like that. And so I think showing you care about it is probably the biggest thing you can do because when people talk about what they care about, things change. And I think we've kind of just been at a point where we'll be like, oh, yeah, this is terrible, but nothing's actually being done about it. Which is why I'm inspired by these people that like the authors and the researchers because just putting their information out there is showing that not just that we care about it, but that we kind of have to care about it because if we don't, we'll have a lot of consequences. So I'd say voting, talking about it, just like getting the word out there is the first step, but I also say one of the biggest steps because if everyone that cares about it will do that, then it'll definitely wake up a lot of governments and even people that just don't know that we need to take action.
I would say something would be, besides just that, I think comes first and first, is to change the framework kind of around these issues and these problems. I agree voting's a big thing, but I think that, well, until we're able to actually adapt the framework about how we look at certain issues, where we get rid of this anthropocentric model that we discuss a lot, where it's us first, and we're not saying to completely sacrifice our well-being, but to maybe take into consideration in some parts what would be best for the entire ecosystem. And the best advocacy you can do is be inclusive of those plants and animals, kind of what we were talking about, where seeing the ecosystem as a whole instead of its individual parts. And once we adjust for that framework and that becomes a bit more mainstream, then we can look at issues like the entire ecosystem and not just the top members, top species.
Yeah, kind of building off of what Sawyer said, I think one of the biggest ways to advocate is talking about and bringing up ecocentric perspectives and like raising awareness and challenging human-centered thinking. And then, of course, like getting involved locally through conservation efforts and initiatives and supporting policies and organizations that protect ecosystems.
Yes, love that. I hope everyone's feeling inspired. I know I am. There's so many different conservation things in Bryan College Station, so I encourage everyone to take a look and see where you can lend a helping hand. Thank you everyone so much for joining us. I am so glad that we get to celebrate Campus Earth Month together. I hope to see y'all at our talk on Friday and at Earth Day next week. So I hope everyone has a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.